Welcome inside another edition of Mountaineer Report here on WV Sports Now. And are you pressing the panic button? A lot of Mountaineer fans are, as the men's basketball team loses again, their third straight loss. This one to a top 10 team, where the other ones were teams coming off losing streaks of their own. But same old story, death taxes and the Mountaineers with a slow start, trying to come back at the end. Javon Snall not able to nearly do what he did a couple weeks ago, and another loss. Mike Asti, Cody Nespor here, again, WVSN. All of our written coverage is on the site. Follow here. If you are watching on YouTube, click the notification bell and also find us everywhere you get your podcasts, searching Mountaineer Report in Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. So we are going to talk about the men's team's skid and if they can get off the snide, if they can pick it up, if they are still a tournament team, or if you should start panicking, because Darren DeVries admitted he doesn't really have answers why they have these slow starts, and the players said it's on them, but the scouts are fine. So why are they sluggish to open these games? And we also are going to talk a little bit here about Wyatt Milum at the Senior Bowl, and obviously he's going to be the player that's going to get drafted. I feel comfortable in saying that. There are others trying to be in the NFL at WVU this cycle, but he's the one who's going to get drafted at some point. But after an All-American type career at tackle, do NFL teams want him to play a different position? That seems to maybe be the case if you read the tea leaves drop for you at the Senior Bowl, and usually a lot of tea leaves are dropped there from what you're going to see throughout NFL draft season. So, Cody, first off, happy birthday. It was my birthday a few days ago, and then it was your birthday just yesterday here, as we're recording this now on the 30th here on Thursday. So the program didn't get you a happy birthday present of a victory for Mountaineers. Gave you the day off. I covered the game there on location, and I got to experience the same thing everyone else has been experiencing the prior two games, one at home and one on the road, and a really, really sluggish start, and then guns blazing in the second half. So from what you still saw from the game and the coverage from the game, where are you now? I know it was a little bit of, okay, wait and see. They eventually were going to have a losing streak. They weren't going to be able to have Javon Small carry the load forever. But are you pressing a panic button right now? Or is this maybe showing who they really are and it's not that great of a team? Or can they turn it around? And does the second half show reason for optimism? Because in that second half, they look like they could beat anybody. But you play two halves and they lost.
Yeah. It probably is time to panic, I think.
Okay.
Well,
You were hesitant in me going in that direction, even when we did this show a week ago. So this is one more game, and this is interesting now. Okay.
It's time to hover your hand over the panic button, I guess.
Okay.
Because we all kind of thought this would happen to this team, where they would just run out of gas and they would tire out, and the brutality of the Big 12 schedule would catch up with them. And it's kind of weird. They're in a way fortunate they played Kansas so early and Iowa State so early.
Yeah, I guess
that they weren't beat up and worn out.
And fortunate they beat those teams. We expected this would happen eventually, but I don't think anyone expected they would have those big wins that may still allow them to have a cushion and crawl in a tournament. But it's looking like that's not even a guarantee right now.
Yeah, and now we're at the point where, when you play two Big 12 games every week and you're doing the travel, and the travel's even worse this year because of the teams out west, and you only have a 7-man rotation, like it's very clearly caught up to them. The common basketball knowledge is when you're tired, you don't shoot well. And they're actually the worst shooting team in America over the last 3 games.
It's almost, you got to try to do that, but yeah.
They're from 3, they're 12 for their last 68 over the last 3 games, which is 17%, which is indeed worst in the country. So, and it's like I said, we all kind of thought this would happen. When they were in non-conference play, we were like, let's see the Big 12 stuff. And then they beat Kansas, and then they beat Iowa State, and we're like, damn, this team's good. And now I think what we initially thought would happen is now happening, where it's really tough to play Wednesday and then get on the plane and go to Kansas State and play Saturday and then get back on the plane and come back here and
They're
play
not the
Houston
only
on
team in the
Tuesday.
conference doing this, though.
Exactly.
But yeah,
But that catches up.
it does.
And when the bench is so short, and Javon Small plays 38 minutes a game, like this was bound to happen. I do when you beat Kansas, when you beat Iowa State, everybody is optimistic, and we were optimistic on this show. But I think this is kind of reality now. And now, instead of even last week, we were kind of talking like, second half of the schedule is easier, kind of coast into the tournament. Now it's like, you lose to the two of the worst teams in the conference. It's hard to coast now.
Yeah, Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, talking the men's basketball slide here, maybe come back to reality of late. And they do have the cushion that they really only need to split the rest of the way, and in all likelihood would crawl into the NCAA tournament. They have the big wins. They already have 13 wins right now. We've said all year, and the proof is in the pudding the last several years on how the committee has treated the NCAA teams based on Ken Pom and the rankings, and more even an emphasis on analytics these last several years, that 18 wins is kind of that barometer, especially when you have these major resume boosting victories that they do have. Gonzaga, Kansas, Iowa State, even a win over Arizona. So one of the teams that beat you also beat, even though it's way back during Thanksgiving. That really helps them. And if they get in the NCAA tournament with Tucker DeVries missing most of the year, with the depleted bench in year one, even if it is off of analytics and they only win 18, 19 games, but they do get in, even if they're one and done, that is a really impressive achievement for a program that's been off of drama and has been losing and is coming off of arguably the worst season in program history. But as kind of what you're alluding to, we never figured in the midst of all that they would have the victories over Gonzaga, Kansas, and Iowa State. So when you have 3 top 10 wins and you crawl in and kind of go down the drain, even in a tough conference, even if you have the excuse of injuries and a depleted bench, it does lead fans to reasonably say, if you can do that against that team, and if you can go to Lawrence and do that, why are you down 20 at halftime against another top 10 team? This time you're at home. That's a fair question, and Darren DeVries admittedly does not have an answer to it. We've been asking him. He has said basically point blank, I don't know, but it keeps happening, even saying that these games feel like they are repeats of each other. But that's just the weird case. I mean, they have basically the weirdest season in the country, we could argue, based on how it's unfolded so far. But moving forward, if they do split and they only have one more ranked team on the schedule in Texas Tech, they do have an opportunity to still get some wins, to even get in comfortably, even an outside chance at winning 20 games still. Then there's the Big 12 tournament. Who knows? It still could be there. But you can't ride a wave of Javon Small scoring 20 points a game forever. That was never going to carry on forever, and he was doing that when they were getting the big wins. You really need somebody else, and Hansberry's had some moments. They've had other players have some moments. They even went a little deeper against Houston too, but Sincere Harris has had some moments. You need another player. I mean, even Kelvin Sampson said it. I know it would be different and would be a problem if you had Tucker DeVries and Javon Small out there together now. Because if Javon Small gets tired from having to carry a load for a while, Tucker DeVries can then pick him up. And you also figure, Cody, that Javon Small would never be this exhausted from having to carry them if he had Tucker back in early January into late December, etc. But yeah, now they're below 500 in conference play, so that doesn't look great. That this is getting closer to kind of what it was at the end of Huggins, where fans are getting frustrated. You can do out of conference schedule, but not compete in the conference. You have the Kansas win, you have the Iowa State win, and you're not going to get killed, and they haven't been. If you actually notice, they went up a spot in KenPom despite losing to Houston, because they were a top 10 team. You're supposed to lose, and you were competitive with them at least in the second half. But the Arizona State, Kansas State games are just hard to make up. What do you think they can do, assuming they don't get Tucker DeVries back? And we talked about extensively on our last show, that's very unlikely. DeVries didn't give any more information other than he does believe they can still win even without Tucker, even though they would have to be a different team. And Tucker was out there in sweats, so it's more of the same there. The rumor mill churns. You can go to our last pod to really get deeper into that. But assuming they don't get Tucker back, assuming that they got to eventually get Javon Small to find himself a little bit and get over this exhaustion, 8 points against Houston just not going to get it done. And assuming nobody else can be that superstar, is there a recipe for you? I mean, we're talking like we're pressing a panic button and the season's just down the drain. They got, 10 more games left to go. Darren DeVries is a great coach, may still win Coach of the Year. He's not going to quit. What can be done with their remaining schedule?
Yeah. They really need like just a reset game. Because they just got to shake off like the bad shooting and the slow starts. They just got to have a game where they shake all that off and get out of the funk. And it's tough. Right now it's not complimentary basketball. Earlier on, at Kansas, they would get stops on defense, get out in transition, get easy buckets. They're not doing that right now, and they're playing really hard on defense still, so they're wearing themselves out, and then they come out and in a half court they're having to take threes and shoot, and it's when you play that hard on defense, you would love to go down on the other end and pound it inside and get looks close at the rim, but they can't do that because they don't have those kind of centers, and so they're having to shoot with tired leg, and it's like you just got to get a game, and maybe that'll be at Cincinnati on Sunday. Maybe that'll be at TCU next week. Those are two teams that aren't playing great, this conference season. Not that matters.
Again, I mean, losing streaks for Kansas State and Arizona State coming into those games. Obviously, Houston was riding a major win streak.
But like one of those games, you've got to go and either get back to what you were doing before that works so well, or find something new. Maybe you can go inside a little bit. Maybe you can push somebody up, or you can get like high-low action or something. You just got to find something because what you're doing right now isn't working. It's not. So one of these two games coming up. You just gotta, right? Like it's gotta happen. Something. I don't know
Cincinnati's a winnable game, but it's on the road, so it's a close road trip. You don't have to go across the country. Maybe that's been part of the exhaustion. It's the closest road trip they have outside of Pitt, so you can maybe use that as a benefit. There's several games or several days in between that game, but that's not an easy place to play. I mean, maybe it was just so hard for Mountaineer fans or Mountaineer teams when they're led by Huggins, who obviously the Cincinnati fans had personal feelings towards. It won't be like that. I don't think anything will get thrown or any derogatory comments will get made at DeVries and his family. But it won't be easy still. It's a rabid fan base. And TCU is a team that, you should beat, but they could be pesky too. They're obviously, well coached. That's kind of the situation throughout the rest of the conference. Nothing's a gimme, but I do think what needs to happen is they need a game in there. I don't want to force them to have to get a blowout because all wins count the same, but it's almost like they need a game where they open up, a 16-2 run in their favor and they really find themselves again and they get confident. Maybe they beat somebody by 10. They need that type of performance for me then to get sold on them not only being a tournament team, but making a run, whether it be in the Big 12 or the NCAA. Even if they're crawling to these victories, I'd be concerned. They need more from Small. They need him to get over this exhaustion. And they need him to also take better shots. He was 1 for his first 6, I believe, or maybe 1 for his first 4. I think it was Hansberry that was 1 for his first 6. And they just were bad shots. It almost seems like he's forcing shots because it does appear, without being a sports psychologist, that in his brain he knows, I have to get to a certain level of points or we're done. Like I have to get going early and often or we're done. And then it ends up where he doesn't get going until it's way too late because he's pressing so much early on. And I also don't know what's going on in the fact that we asked DeVries point blank, why do you believe you've had these slow starts? Because you clearly proven, even with this team without Tucker, you can beat anybody anywhere. He said he didn't know, and then the players jumped in and said, the scouts are great. We love the coaching staff. We're playing hard for them. We're not putting in the same effort in the first half as we're putting in the second half, to paraphrase. And then you're sitting there thinking, why? Like I don't know if they're just exhausted, but it does seem like maybe the players have some mental fatigue or physical fatigue that they're not able to start these games as strong, because even at home now, they're having these sluggish starts, granted, again, to a top 10 team in Houston, but that just can't happen against anybody. You get down 10 early in a game against anybody in the Big 12, no matter what their record is, you definitely could lose. Like you're playing catch up the rest of the way. And then the one problem that we knew would be a problem entering the season that I don't think they can fix is rebounding. Now, Houston's one of the best rebounding teams, not only in the country, but all time. If you look at the numbers, West Virginia, once again, just got manhandled there. And I don't know how that gets fixed either. It almost appears, if you want to press that panic button, that Javon Small needs to score, be the Big 12 Player of the Year in every game, lead the way, carry them through spurts, and probably have a minimum of anywhere from 18 to 22 points, or they can't win. That's what it appears like right now. And if that is the case, they're toast, because you can't expect that every single night.
Yeah. I do wonder, I'll have to look this up. I wonder what the last win where Javon wasn't the leading scorer was.
Wow. Off the top
maybe
of my head, I mean,
maybe Kansas, but I still think he had 18 at Kansas.
Yeah, he still scored. I thought that there's a difference too, whether he's a leading scorer versus having 8 versus being 1 for 4. Like he has to produce. He has to be involved.
Yeah.
And if you're going to get somebody else to step up and be that, that would be great. Maybe going back to maybe the Arizona game, was Tucker DeVries the leading scorer, because he had a lot of threes, so he would have been the leading scorer in that game. If you go back to that, but again, when Tucker was there, it almost was a different team. It almost feels like a different team. It almost feels like it was years ago, let alone this exact same group. So the schedule does get friendlier, but it's just interesting that this slide has continued. And I don't think anybody was expecting them to beat Houston. Even the metrics were not expecting them to beat Houston. But the problem is, once again, to get down so much so quickly and then be down 20 at halftime. And yeah, you started the second half forcing turnovers, flipping the game. They came out guns blazing. Why they cannot do that to open up games when they believe in the scouting report and everybody thinks this is a great coaching staff, that is going to be beyond me. I mean, I don't get that, because I don't want to accuse these players of not caring or not wanting to win, but that's the kind of effort you're seeing early in these games, even with the crowd behind you. And the crowd influenced the game a little bit in the second half. They tried, they certainly did in the Iowa State win. But crowd can only do so much when you're down 20. You gotta keep digging yourself out of that hole.
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive, because you'd figure if they retired, that would show up in the second half more. When
you would think,
the last two games, at least, they've been much better in the second half. Arizona State, the second half was pretty bad. So Sincere Harris, our press conference before the game, I asked him about the slow start. He was very honest. He said, "Hey, when they're making shots and we're not making shots, we just get frustrated." And
but you know that about yourself, and then a day later you do it. You do it again.
Yeah, but I think you see that, because what Houston went up 10-2, and you kind of see it, and I don't know, like maybe the halftime when DeVries gets them back in the locker room and
gives a hell of a speech. He seems like a
like maybe
speaker.
Maybe that's like
screams and punches the locker. Yeah,
maybe they're just able to go in and reset and wash that off. But like, we're not reaching. Like, it's this last 3 games they've gone down.
I mean, they're also saying it. I mean, the players
are
saying, Joseph said, the scouts are good. Our effort is not there in the first half, and it is in the second half, and we know what we can do. And DeVries then talked about, he told the team after the Houston game, take the effort from the second half, bring it to practice, bring it to Cincinnati. That effort can beat anybody, even without Tucker DeVries. That's the effort you need. And I do think the scenario that is the issue here, Cody, and then we'll kind of move on to Wyatt Milum. if they were losing these games because they are an undermanned team, they do have a depleted roster, they do have a very small bench, and those are legit problems. Even though fans will take them as excuses, they are legit problems in a tough conference. Whether you think Javon Small is the best player and Tucker is the second best, or vice versa, whatever, I think you're a little clouded by Javon Small's, great month he had. Tucker is an NBA prospect, or some say he's not there. So it doesn't matter how you rank them. Not having him is a big deal. These are valid reasons and excuses. But with that said, it'd be one thing if they just eventually were starting to lose, even with the big wins and kind of getting exposed and getting tired. Okay, maybe this year could only go so far. It's still better than last year for sure, and then taking a step. But it's a whole nother story to have that happen because of a lack of effort, and then have these continual slow starts in games and see that only a handful of minutes later, Red Panda, juggle some dishes and you're out there and looking like you are almost about to upset the top 10 team in just a half of basketball. What changed? And yeah, you should have more legs in that first half than the second half, but that is not the case. So the way it's happening, I think, is more frustrating for fans than if they just eventually got exposed and started losing, because I don't think anybody really before game one thought Sweet 16 plus, which is what people were thinking after the Kansas win. But to lose this way, it's hard to have the team. Here's the thing. A team playing like this and losing this way, normally people would be criticizing the coach. Because how is your team not getting up, and how is your team down so early in these games? Are you maybe taking these teams for granted? Are you not getting your team up to play? Is your scouting report not up to snuff? Are you overlooking these teams that records are not exactly where they where they would want to be, with the exception of Houston? But we know that's not going on. The players are saying the scouting reports are fine. The practices, they look good. Darren DeVries has proven time and time again he is a great coach, and he did win big games, and he's kind of already overachieved this year. So if that's not all happening, it then goes to the players' effort. And if their effort is the problem here, with the exception of basketball and the other excuses, that just sucks too. Like that shouldn't be happening. But Mountaineer Report here. Find us everywhere you get your podcasts, and here on YouTube. Also hit up WV Sports Now for our coverage of the rest of this men's basketball season, and the women as well. But now to switch gears, I do want to talk about Wyatt Milum a little bit. So he's at the Senior Bowl right now in Mobile, Alabama, having some barbecue and some brisket, although probably not, because he's trying to impress the NFL scouts. Austin Brinkman, by the way, is there as well. But, all respect to him, we're going to talk about Wyatt Milum right now. He's the one player that's, I think, safe to say is going to get drafted somewhere. Where is a different story. All-American at tackle. Every award you want. Every watch list you want. People were talking about him as an NFL player early in his sophomore year. A stud there at tackle. He's a real big body. But NFL teams are working him now at guard. In fact, he even took some reps at center. Number one, is that at all surprising for you? Do you actually read into what's going on in the Senior Bowl as being reality for him in making it in the NFL? Or do you think this is a bit of a smokescreen? They just want to see his versatility and he'll still be a tackle? And what are your kind of early draft season thoughts about Wyatt Milum throughout this process? Because he's doing everything teams want, and they want to see a lot of guard action, which he didn't do at all at WVU.
Yeah. I think Wyatt, I think Wyatt is like a top 100 pick. He like guaranteed. That's what he is. Like he could go at the end of the first round. I would be surprised if he didn't go in the second round. So very, very safe top 100 pick. There is this obsession in the NFL, trend in the NFL of putting tackles at guard just as like just to see who is it. What's the guy? Mekhi Becton. This year was the big kind of success story. So do NFL teams want him to play guard? They would be stupid, right? They would be stupid if they did. He's one of the best centers in the country the last 2 years. Whether you go by the All-American lists or the PFF grades or just the actual like sacks allowed numbers.
Tackles you mean, but yeah.
So he's one of the. So he's one of the. I mean, you could consensus All-American this year. You could argue he was the best tackle in the country. He's certainly 2 or 3. PFF grades him as that. They graded him as that last year. I think he was the best or the second best pass blocker in the country last year. I think this year they graded him as third, maybe, or maybe he was third overall. But for any team to see all that and say he's never played guard in college, let's see if he can at the Senior Bowl, and then we'll have him play guard. Now, like, I'm sure it's just like could he ever play guard? Or, if we draft him and he doesn't start on day one, could he be like the backup swingman? Or like, it's got to be that, because it's no team would seriously not draft him as a tackle.
You would think so. You would think so.
Yeah. I think the only concern for Wyatt is, like he's not going to test well at the combine. Like his athletic numbers, his wingspan, like that stuff's just not going to be good because he's not that kind of athlete.
Yeah, it's not like a Zach Frazier who was a wrestler and had the wrestling background, and for his body was
And Zach didn't do any. I think he only did the best bench press because he had the his leg injury.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, actually, I was there at the combine. He took forever to come speak to us in interviews because he was getting evaluated with his injury so much. So yeah, a lot of it was about his injury last year. That's not the case for Wyatt Milum. That's
so. But that's what would make Wyatt not a first round pick is, and it's you can read all of the different draft evals. He has short arms, comparatively.
Yeah.
People don't like his bend. People, they talk about his lower half. So he's not going to put up like monster athletic numbers, like probably in any of the tests at the combine. But like the degree to which that influences a team's decision on an offensive lineman, I don't know. Certainly we see if a receiver runs 4.6 at the combine, we see that hurt them. For offensive linemen, I don't know if that's going to be a big thing. Like Frazier didn't go in the first round because he obliterated his leg, right? Like that's why he was in the second round. But Wyatt, like I told you he's a lock, top 100. I'd feel very good about Wyatt going in the first round. Unless
top 100 could still slide to the third round.
And that's like I don't. Yeah, I can't foresee a reason why he would. Like his tape is phenomenal. His what he's done as a 4-year starter was phenomenal. He grades out phenomenal. So like he's going to be like I said, I would feel very safe him in the first round. He's going to be a first or second round pick, probably no matter what.
Yeah, and he has the personality. He has his head on straight. He's going to test in the intangibles very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he didn't see any action outside of tackle in games at WVU, but he did see time in practice with Matt Moore, who Matt Moore is really all about making everybody versatile. Even Zach Frazier, he knew he was always going to be a center, but he wanted him we saw him sometimes practicing at tackling guard, and it just looked crazy. But Matt Moore, there was a method to his madness. So he's done that with Wyatt Milum as well, even though he didn't do it in games. Now, this is actually a tip of the cap to our colleague Alan Saunders at Steelers Now throughout our network. He actually asked Wyatt Milum point blank kind of what you're saying. You spend so much time at tackling games. You got all the accolades there, just paraphrasing Alan's question, kind of where he was going. There are some players in your position that would say, I get you want me to be versatile and things can happen in the NFL, but here at the Senior Bowl at the beginning of this process, I'm not willing, respect to you, I'm not willing to do all these workouts and get on film and get written about and get all these videos of me at guard, even freaking center for a couple days, because I'm not going to look good there. And I want to be a tackle in the NFL. That's where I'm going to make my money. That's how I'm going to be this top 100 pick that Cody's talking about. Did you consider saying no? Because it wouldn't even be, there are players that do that and it's just considered commonplace. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to play a position that I never did in a game in 4 years for you and have it be on film and talked about by everybody. But he's willing to do whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever. I'm pretty sure he would take a rep at jumbo tight end if they asked him. So do you think in any way that's a mistake of him, that he's almost acquiescing and being too nice, that there might be some NFL teams that are going to say, yeah, you have all these awards in the Big 12 as an individual player, but you're not as versatile as you say you are because this film's you not getting it done at guard. So now I'm only looking at you at tackle, and now you're the number 3 tackle, and now I need other positions, and now that's how you're in the 3rd round.
Yeah. It's if it was a scenario where Wyatt hadn't cross-trained at all, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll take a couple snaps at this Senior Bowl," and he looks terrible at guard because he doesn't know how to play it.
Right.
Like, yeah, that would hurt him. I will, and people have been mad at Matt Moore, like since the staff change. But you got
he's there wearing the Virginia Tech pullover, by the way, in the pictures with Milum. I'm grinning ear to ear. Yeah,
you got to give Matt Moore his flowers. He gets these guys prepared. He got them prepared. And he told us very, very often, like every offensive lineman takes snaps in the offseason because you never know. Every offensive lineman plays every position because you never know.
Never know.
And that's I think, you do that for 4 years. If you're Wyatt Milum, you get to the Senior Bowl, they're like, hey, could we see you at guard a little bit? He's like, yeah, absolutely. Because for 4 years he's cross-trained and he knows how to do it. And it's you have to give credit to Matt Moore. People are mad at him, but you just have to. No, I don't think because Wyatt does know, at least in theory, how to play guard, how to line up and get off and all that stuff. Obviously it's never been in game, but he knows how to do it. And so if an NFL scout says, hey, can I see you do it? He knows how to do it. Like that can't hurt him.
It's interesting that it's been such a focus of the conversation at the Senior Bowl that he's clearly doing it repeatedly. The only maybe kind of thought I have that if he's still clearly a tackle, which I'm sure that'll be his position when he's drafted, but if that's still the thought process that he's tackle or nothing, maybe NFL teams are thinking, we already know he's good enough for me at tackle. We've already seen that enough. So I want to try to see something else to where I'm willing to take more of a flyer on an earlier round pick, or just want to see something else from him because I already know this box is checked off over here, but I'm unsure about this one. So maybe he's just going to experience a lot of guard action, a lot of guard conversations, take a snap or two at center because they're just trying to almost have some fun and say you're an elite tackle, but let's see something else.
Yeah. I mean, he played right guard or right tackle his freshman year. He's played left tackle every year after that. Yeah. I mean, you've got easily over 1,000 snaps. I mean, easily over 1,000 snaps to watch of him playing tackle. Like, and that's what I think is maybe weird about the Senior Bowl is like someone like him, other than just going against the other like top guys there, like what do you want to see? Like, what would you need to see as an NFL scout out of him, other than like, hey, we want you to go against the edge rusher from Oregon or whatever, just to see how you do.
But we saw how that went, and they end up throwing down a little bit. But yeah, do you have an evaluation of his right arm and his cross?
I don't know. I wasn't impressed on either side of that fight.
Okay. Most people are saying Wyatt Milum won that fight, even non-West Virginia fans. But it wasn't that great of a fight. But there was some punches thrown. He got in there at the end there. It seemed like Milum tried to lay that last one in for good measure. But yeah, and that just happens at the Senior Bowl. I don't know. I mean, people maybe will go wild and say that's his frustration with being tested against maybe bigger to equal guys, where he maybe was the bigger guy normally in most situations at West Virginia in college, and dealing with kind of tinkering around his position a little bit at the Senior Bowl. But it was more of a funny fight that happened. But he is willing to do whatever, and I don't think it's going to really hurt him. I don't know if I would put money down that he's a first round pick right now, but he's definitely getting drafted. I do think third, fourth round at the worst. If it's into the fourth round, that something went awry, but I think he's the type of player that would be a steal in a mid to later round also for you, and could be a player for you for years to come. And Matt Moore, not even just Zach Frazier, he also got Doug Nestor in the NFL. Matt Moore gets players in the NFL. He was the assistant coach getting you in the NFL more than anybody else on the Neil Brown staff, no matter what you think of the era. So, and I do also expect Wyatt Milum to be looked at, to be talked to have a lot of teams interested in having that conversation. We don't have too many reports right now, and in particular teams interested in him this early into the Senior Bowl process and draft season process. But I'd imagine he's going to get a combine invite. I'd imagine he's going to get a lot of conversation and going to have a lot of teams talking to him as we move forward here in the coming month plus.
And tackles always go. I mean, quarterbacks,
Right.
Quarterbacks, pass rushers, tackles always go early.
That's
And if
true.
you think like I don't like at worst is Wyatt the third tackle in the class like today right now. So that's wrong. Like I'm supremely confident he's going to go early because
You're a
tackles
little
always
high on
go.
him, I feel like. Yeah, the first.
Ta-
Oh, you're almost guaranteeing first round. That's a
tackle
hot
like
take high. Yeah, but okay.
I would be surprised like today, and I don't, obviously things happen at the combine and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like today, I would be surprised if he is there in like the 50s.
Okay.
Like even if he goes like Zach Frazier went high. Even if he
He
like
did.
was
Yeah.
around that long, uh, I would be surprised because I think for a couple years, um, Wyatt's been like the NFL guy on WVU and even more so than Zach was, and
He looked like an NFL player.
yeah,
Almost. There's even that picture of him at the brawl. He's towering over players, even other linemen. He looked like an NFL player and kind of carried himself that way, even maybe more so at times than Frazier. The interesting difference of Frazier, though, that we're not yet aware of with Milum that we're going to learn about is there were rumors of the Steelers and this love affair with Frazier
yeah,
from now to the draft. And obviously it wasn't a first round thing, but it became them getting him in the second round. And he also fit in all the intangibles and everything. And, the close proximity was part of it too, but they just loved him so much. So it seemed like that in his worst case scenario, while other teams were interested as well, if he would fall out of the first round, the Steelers would immediately nab him up, which is exactly what happened. It'll be interesting if there's a team that falls in love with Milum that we continuously hear about, that he's repetitively in their thoughts and in reports with that team, if he's connected anywhere, or if he is just a popular player for everybody, or if he's just going to fit wherever, because that type of player you can kind of always use on any team, and what situation he gets into. As we wrap it up, is there a team in mind? I mean, we both follow the NFL as well. I've covered the NFL, but you're definitely following the NFL. Is there a team for you that you think makes sense for Wyatt Milum, just off the top of your head right now, that this could be a team to watch out for, that you're going to hear about, that's going to be connected to him, that you would not be surprised if they are the team in constant reports for Wyatt Milum?
yeah. Let me think, because my initial thought would be like playoff teams that need offensive linemen.
Okay.
Um,
So that's where you're going, like a later first, or then if
yeah,
that
and like
doesn't happen, then a later second, then maybe.
yeah, so like I don't know, Houston
Okay.
could maybe need Green Bay.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of
Washington,
team.
maybe the
Oh yeah,
Commanders,
that would
especially with what they're doing with Daniels, and they have a lot of
yeah,
holes still, especially on that line, even though they did get in the NFC Championship game. If you ask their fans, they think they kind of got there off luck. They need to repair some things. They would need more, I think, around Daniels to avoid an RG3 repeat
yeah,
scenario.
yeah.
Go
That's
with
I'm
that
thinking
lineup.
teams that don't need skill players and don't need defense. And those would be three good teams. Without
Yeah.
thinking about it for 20 more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of their heads right now. But yeah, I think the Commanders are maybe an interesting scenario. But
Yeah,
yeah, Houston could make sense. Green Bay could make sense. If you want to go totally out of playoff teams, the Bears I could see making
the
sense.
Bears,
They
yeah.
did a lot skill position wise, but didn't lead to
Cincinnati,
wins. Teams that
yeah,
have young quarterbacks that I think are still focusing on the line, but maybe they have skill position guys. But even if they weren't good teams, they need to build up that line even more. Maybe the young quarterback even better and help him even more. The Bears, Cincinnati, even still with Burrow, yeah, that could be
yeah,
another situation. Dallas could be thrown out there. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of options for sure for Wyatt Milum. A lot of teams interested in him, and he's also the type of player that even a really, really good team, I could even see Philadelphia, even a team that's really, really good in an elite team that maybe they just want to, have another elite player to their line like a Wyatt
yeah,
Milum and add
yeah,
either
yeah,
more depth, add a chance for the future, or continue to do what they're doing. And teams that are focusing so much on the run game, maybe, which is weird, but like Philadelphia, trying to keep a quarterback healthy. Maybe they have skill position guys, but want to do more in the line. Those teams are absolutely to watch out for. So it'll be interesting how the process moves for Wyatt Milum, but I think it's a safe bet. He's definitely going to get drafted. We'll see about Austin Brinkman. We'll see about Sean Martin. We'll see about Garnet Hollis, their Shrine Bowl participants. We'll see. about everybody else, but I think Wyatt Milum is going to allow the program to continue the streak here that was interrupted years ago about getting a player into the NFL and getting drafted in the NFL. Frazier did get last year, so they can kind of build upon that and build this new streak here. And that'll be nice. Maybe consolation prize for Neil Brown, who was there in Mobile to get another one in. He'll get credit for it, even though his tenure is over. So that'll do it for this edition of Mountaineer Report. We are, I don't know if we're pressing, but our hands are hovering over the panic button for the men's basketball team. Maybe you could press, depending on how I think really you can decide whether you're pressing the first 2 minutes of the next game. That's when you're pressing or not pressing. Those first 2 minutes, very, very, you don't need to watch the whole game. Just early on, you could decide, okay, I pressed and I'm going to turn it off, honestly, because you already know how this is going to go and maybe how the rest of the season is going to go, even though, we're going to have to sit here in a couple months and try to, analyze the whole season as a whole, which might be still a success. But the way it's going now, it's hard to feel that way with the recent slide here. And then we will see Senior Bowl onward for Wyatt Milum and company. Make sure to hit the notification bell here on YouTube and also download, subscribe, or where you get your podcasts for Mountaineer Report, and find all of our coverage of all Mountaineer athletics now in a partnership with Nemacolin. By the way, and Cody, you got to get there at some point. I remember one time in the press box, you told me all these advertisements of Nemacolin. What is that? Where is that? What is that about? And I had to explain to you the glory of the resort of Nemacolin. So now they are all partnered up. They kind of were anyway. I don't even know the announcement was made. Nemacolin's all over the place. But nonetheless, WV Sports Now for all of our coverage.